I've got a task for one coach, Gerard, and that is to get on the phone and get Josh Kennedy out of retirement. That coach is Ross Lyon, and St Kilda need to get Josh Kennedy out of retirement.
Well, you got your choice of two, Joshes. You can go for the Sydney one or you can go for the West Coast, but obviously
they need the goal-kicking one.
Yeah.
They need the goal-kicking one, Gerard. This isn't. I've repeated myself a couple of times. I said it when he retired. Spoke about it during trade radio. I said Fremantle should be on the phone. Essendon should be. Melbourne should be at the time. I mentioned Collingwood. Because I think they're in a really interesting spot, because the reason they moved on from Brett Ratton is they said, this list is better than what we've delivered. So they're expecting finals. They've said, we don't want to be stuck between 6 and 10.
They gave themselves the out, though, that they may have to go backwards to go forwards. So
I think that they have to play finals. Otherwise, the egg on the face of those who have made this decision to re-sign and sack Brett Ratton. Now, Kennedy, clearly it's his body, and he's spoken about the debilitating knee injury that he's got. But if the call hasn't been made yet, it needs to be made. He kicked 37 goals from 15 games last year. That almost puts him
kicked 8 in the last, didn't he?
He kicked 8 in the last, and that's in a side that won 2 games. Can you imagine if you put him into a decent side, you sold him a really good wage, the prospect of a job after football. You say, we'll play 12 to 15 games again this year, we'll manage you. Saints can't afford to miss the final. So anyway, that's the job for Ross Lyon to come up with something, because as we spoke about last night, right now they're facing the prospect without Max King of a pretty disappointing year, I would think.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced that the Saints have to play finals. I mean, ultimately they want a premiership, and you know, in getting to that premiership, they go backwards to a small degree this year. I haven't got a problem with that. Paddy Ryder's not there. They've got a couple of injuries. Now that King's not there, that's going to set them back a bit, which doesn't mean they can't play finals. But, I mean, I'm not against your idea. I think anything creative like that can fill a hole. Whether or not you can convince him would be the real challenge for someone at St Kilda. And they may just say, well, no, we're not going down that track. We're here to build for the future. We don't need the stopgap. We'll give some more time to youngsters. But if they could land him, I'm sure to give some excitement, at least short term.
Saints fans, am I crazy? 1300 736 736. Is there anyone else that you could get out of retirement? Michael Hurley, I saw him playing cricket over the weekend. Is he someone that you could get out of retirement? Could you convince Paddy Ryder to come back? I don't know, but all I know is that I think something reasonably desperate needs to happen. I mean, Josh Shackey got another opportunity. He's kicked 12 goals in the last 3 years. Sam Wiedemann got an opportunity. Josh Kennedy, I believe, is still probably a top 10 key forward in the competition.
Well, according to the text machine, Saints are going to rely on Hayes, as you've described. Sharman, young bloke who's shown a bit, but not constant enough to rely on just at the moment. But that's the one of every young player coming through. And, of course, Membry's going to probably go back to the goal square.
Yeah, Hayes is off a knee reconstruction, so it's a massive ask for, essentially an untried player. He's played a couple of games and was impressive, but then did his knee. Cooper Sharman is a medium-sized forward, so he's your perfect third or fourth tall, and actually like him, he's a really good contested mark. But, I mean, they're not going to carry you to the finals. So how are you going to compete with what Richmond have got, what Brisbane have now got, what Geelong have got, what Port Adelaide have got, and what Carlton have got? I mean, there's frightening forward combinations around the place. And not that excited by Hayes and Membry with a bit of Higgins and a bit of Butler. So I don't know. I think Ross Lyon needs to do something a little bit more drastic than that. I 100% agree with you, Gerard. This is off the text message. Also have the same initials as you, and I love the show, says Greg. That was on the back of your editorial. Dan says Steve Kerr is by far and away the best coach in sport. Sam de Koning signed a new contract extension, Gerard.
3 years, yep.
Yeah, so Andrew Mackey was on SEN Mornings this morning. I don't have it in front of me whether he discussed that piece of information, but my thoughts on Geelong continue to be, I guess, solidified on. I mean, why would he have signed now? I believe he had certainly this
happy.
year. Yeah,
he might be getting more money. He's happy. It's all short term. I mean,
how do they afford them all? I mean, what's he worth?
Well,
they're
not paying the big guns the same dollars. I mean, quite clearly. I mean, Andrew Mackey's been very open, and so has everybody at Geelong. You play there because you want to play there, and you almost get told what you're going to earn. And so it fits in. And whilst we're talking about Geelong,
yeah,
do you think Chris Scott has been given the rightful credit for what's been a sensational second premiership?
That's a good question.
Because I don't think he has. I mean, everyone knew it was a great performance, and it was a big win, obviously, on the day. But I mean, Chris Scott has never, I think, been given enough credit for being where he's at. Everyone focuses on the last two games, which he hasn't been able to get across the line. But he's been there more than just about anybody else. But to rebound from I think it was an 83-point loss in the prelim final last year, to have a similar victory in the last game in the grand final, it was a phenomenal coaching performance. And, I mean, he's had a very low profile since. I don't think anybody's interviewed him. I think he's overseas probably studying again. He may well be back now. But, I mean, that is just one of the great victories, given where they have come from, given how old they were. It's been a reinvention of the way we see the game and we see individuals. He's to me, not getting the credit he deserves.
72.87% win-loss record in the home and away season. His finals record is now 13-15 after three straight, clearly, this year, and that was always the knock on him. But you're right, it's one of the great coaching performances we've ever seen. I keep saying this. I've written Geelong off for the last 6 years. Give them no hope. And even, I remember speaking to Stephen Wells about it, the guru list boss that they've had. He said at some point it's going to end. It hasn't ended.
That's right.
And when you look at Adelaide rebuilding and North rebuilding and Carlton and St Kilda that we've discussed, to stay up there and be relevant, it must be an absolute joy to be a Geelong supporter. And I can't speak highly enough of them. And this re-signing of arguably one of the most exciting players in the comp. I mean, it'd be top 5 in terms of value to your club. And what he did on grand final day and this year, and just to put him in at centre-half forward for the next 10 years and to have him re-sign when he would have had all sorts of offers coming his way is another example of that. So Geelong fans sitting pretty and clearly believe they've got better again over the journey. Geelong have the most flexible salary cap in history. Some conspiracy theories coming through on the text message machine about that, but I mean, you're not going to get away with anything untoward with your salary cap now. It's too devastating to even attempt it. So they're just good managers of the cap.
Well, it started with Paddy Dangerfield when they extricated him from Adelaide. He wasn't paid the $1 million salary that most people thought he was on. He was on a couple of hundred short from that. And so when Dangerfield's on X, you say to the next bloke who thinks he's worth X, no, you're X minus 25%, and you're going to live at you're going to live in one of the best places in the world, and you either want to go surfing 3 days a week or you don't. So you make up your own mind. Here's your contract, put your name on it, and let's move on.
And 7 out of 10 games you're going to win, and you're going to turn up to the footy club on Monday in a good mood. I mean, that's the other selling point. And you're right, because they had interest in Jordan De Goey. They certainly had interest in Hopper. They put a contract they believe is fair on the table, and if the player says no, that's okay. We'll move on to the next one. We'll go and get Tanner Bruin, or we'll go and get Ollie Henry, or we'll go and get Jack Bowes, and then we'll take pick 7 to the draft. So they've just got a good way of doing things at the moment.
Ollie Henry's a really important pickup for them, but he's got to come through. Now, he's a top 20 draft pick. He might have been higher than that, actually. But he's
17, I think he was.
But he's got plenty of talent, but he's yet to really, make a mark. He's given us a couple of glimpses, but if he can actually become a 200-game player, well, then all of a sudden that's a huge pickup. How did you rate the Blues season, Kane? Because I thought Michael Voss had an amazing impact on that club, and Craig McRae had a similar impact, but he got them through to the preliminary finals, which was, an incredible performance. But I think Vossi, given the injuries he had to put up with, I thought he had a fantastic season. He won't be happy with it. Carlton won't be happy with it. But, the impact he had on that club was extraordinary.
Yes. For me, they needed one of the last 4. I thought it was important for them to experience finals. I know you've got a different thought on that. I think you believe that this will drive.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about missing. The level of commitment they had in those last few games was extraordinary. And, they were in there with their second rotation and half their first rotation, the midfield not playing in some respects. Couple of injuries to those guys that were playing as well. So, to me, I thought they extracted an amazing amount they maximised
what they had.
They did. They should have beaten Collingwood. How they lost that is beyond me. That'll put a bit of spice into the next couple of decades of Collingwood Carlton games in some respects.
Yeah, no, 88,000. I just looked it up at the MCG on that day. It was one of the more extraordinary games I've ever worked on. But for me, it was they needed to pinch one of those last four and experience finals, and hopefully that progression is there. I'm firmly believe that it will be. I'm a big fan of Michael Voss and what he has done. He's a great motivator, and they're all in with this group who must be motivated. And I mean, there's no excuses other than to at least win a final next year. You would think, Blues fans, your expectations for the year can have you say on that. Adam Simpson has spoken, and I'm fascinated by the West Coast Eagles. I'm a bit down in the doldrums about it, Gerard.
I've read it.
Not sure what their strategy is. I don't think they know where they are at. They've committed again to a lot of veterans that have underperformed, and their salary cap management hasn't been great. But anyway, Adam Simpson has spoken today. Let's have a listen to how he's going to respond as a team this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've said this before. The health and fitness of our group is probably number one priority at the moment. And last year, I think mid-January, we had 17 PBs from the 2K. And then we had 6 collision injuries, and then COVID started to kick in, and then we never got that back. So the baseline of our health is really important. And once again, while we transition our list and our younger players are coming through, we're going to lean on our younger leaders. So Oscar Allen, Barras, Cole, Shee, Duggan, those types they're driving the standards. In particular, while the senior guys aren't back until Monday, last Monday, there's been a really good high standard block of training they've done. So they look pretty fit. Now it's to connect it to football.
He also spoke about a player who I know you're interested in, and we sort of discussed groin injuries a little bit last night. His name is Elliot Yeo, and you'd have grave concerns now with the repeated issues that he's got, and once again he's come back to training with a bit of a niggle. Let's have a listen to the latest with Elliot Yeo.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as dire as that, but he does need a clean run at it. He had a tiny niggle in his calf, and we've just been conservative. So he's been running for probably a month, and he could start training tomorrow, really. But we're just going to take our time, get to Christmas, and hopefully get a really good run at it in the new year. But it's so small. But unfortunately, it's been recurring, and we're trying everything we can to get him right. Yeah, I think he was All-Australian halfback in his first couple of years with us, so we know what he can bring there. It felt like it was a smoother transition coming from where he was with his fitness base. Unfortunately, not having one, it was an easier transition back in AFL. So if he gets a good base, he's healthy and fit, he can do both. So we need to look at that. It'd be a great problem to have, getting him back and having those discussions. But I feel like we've still got a bit of work to do to get to that. 27
games in the last 3 years for Elliot Yeo.
When you say they don't know where they're at, I mean, how do you come to that conclusion? Because I think everyone at the West Coast knows they're transitioning. He just said that. They've gone to the draft. They've gone big. They're trying to build their midfield. And I think they still, though, particularly with the experience of Geelong, understand that they are entitled to still aim up pretty high because they've got still plenty of talent in and around that 30 years and older bracket.
Yeah, I don't think they can realistically compete with the best sides in finals yet. They've still committed to Hearn and Shuey and Nat Nui and McGovern and Gaff and these experienced players. Yo's probably one of those as well.
But what's the alternatives? You tip all those out and go down to the bottom of the ladder.
But they're down the bottom of the ladder anyway, and they're still with those guys.
Yeah, but they're down for a reason. They're down for a reason. Had a massive injury run last year.
I think the year before wasn't great either. They had some massive losses the year before. I just think the standards have slipped a little bit, and they would clearly they wouldn't agree with that, but. No, I don't know if it was the right move to.
But even that, how do you assess from this far away that their standards are slipped?
You look at them. They won 2 games. How could a team with that much talent on the list?
Well, because they're all injured.
But is that not standards? Like I think that.
Well, not if they're collision injuries, as he said, 6 collision injuries.
Yeah, but there's Elliot Yeo. Just look at him. Look at Tim Kelly. Look at Nat Nui. Are they?
You don't think they're fit enough?
I don't think they're fit enough. No, I don't, and I don't think they have been for a couple of years. And I think there's been some liberties from those players. I think they're somewhat comfortable and secure in the long-term deals that they've got. I mean, don't tell me Andrew Gaff is as hungry as what he was 3 years ago when he was gut running to the point of.
Yeah, but he played with a toe injury the whole year, and I mean this is the problem when we commentate on what we see, but we don't know what's going on in the medical.
But we can't let teams off. I mean, there can't be an excuse. I mean, Sam.
Well,
Walsh
there is
was
an
injured
excuse
last
if you
year.
got a turf toe.
Yeah, well, I think so, but you're out there. So are you injured or are you out
Well,
there?
you're actually out there and you're coping with your injury. So, I mean, this nonsense that injuries is no excuse is rubbish. I mean, if you're out there and you're doing your 15 Ks, and you're doing it with, if you had a full list, you probably wouldn't be out there. You're actually getting robbed of the credit you should be getting.
So you're happy with where the Eagles are at?
Of course, you can't be happy. I mean, but you're saying that their standards have slipped.
Yep.
And I reckon that's a tough call from this far away.
Okay. All right. Well, we can debate that. 1300 736 736 and your expectations of the Eagles. And in terms of list management, it is difficult, and Geelong have made that even more complicated with how old is too old and how deep do you cut. North Melbourne cut deep a few years ago, and they've probably, through their actions of list management, have admitted that was the wrong thing. You do need some experience around, but for me, West Coast are sort of half in on that.